Now that you've loaded your TB through FDM and your intercompany balances either through FDM or manually entered them by intercompany partner, we need to validate that this data all ties out. The first step in doing this is calculating. We do this by going to Process Control in the Project view. We click on it, and what appears is a list of entities to which we have access. If you don't see all of the entities that you have access to, you'll want to click on the search button and add any entities here. For now, what we want to do is we want to go to the entity, we want to right click, and we want to force calculate. First we'll do this for the interco scenario, then we want to do it for the actual scenario. What this does is it copies the income statement to the balance sheet, it copies any year-end balances to beginning balances on the balance sheet, and it also compares what we entered in the interco scenario by intercompany partner to what we loaded in the trial balance without any intercompany partners. So again, we want to right click and click calculate. Now that we've calculated our data in both the actual and interco scenario, we want to validate that our balance sheet and P&L have loaded properly from FDM. To do this, we need to check our balance sheet and income statement reports. So what you need to do is go up to this Explore button and click it. Now I've got a list of folders here that I can see, but because of your access, you won't be able to see all of them. You'll likely see the Financial Reports folder and the Interco folder. We're going to check our Financial Reports folder, so if you expand it, you'll find a balance sheet folder with a report called BS01 APB90. Go ahead and run this report by double-clicking on it. You can change the POV by either selecting the select box, or you can go ahead and type in the member if you know it. Click OK. And as my preference for running reports was set at HTML, I will get an HTML rendering of the report. If I decide that I'd prefer to run it in PDF form and maybe make a printout, I'd go up to my button here and click PDF. I can shrink and enlarge the view, and what I'm looking for here is to ensure that my trial balance balances. So if I scroll all the way to the bottom, as you can see here, our control account is 0, and therefore our balance sheet balances. If this is not 0, you'll have to go back into FDM, change your account mappings and or function mappings, and reload your data into HFM. Let's close this, and now we can run our P&L report by clicking on Profit and Loss Statement, P&L 01, APB 90. We'll double click it. Our POV is retained from the last time we ran a report. We click OK. Again, my report has run in HTML due to my preferences. And I can scroll down and ensure that within my operating expenses section, I will have no balances in the other category. You can see here that my other function expenses is nil, and so it looks as though my FDM load was successful. Now to validate our intercompany data, we want to go to the intercompany reports folder, and we want to run our intercompany 01 SC10 report. Again, we double click and we get a pop-up showing our POV. We leave everything as default. We change the year and period and click OK. And we get a report in the format in which our preferences were set. So my preferences were set at HTML, and therefore I get an HTML report. Now your report will look a bit differently because you don't have access to all these entities. Again, I'm logged in as an admin, so I can see all the entities throughout the entire organization. In the second column, we've got all of the intercompany accounts listed, and in the subsequent columns, we've got the balances in each of those accounts. The interco column contains balances that were entered either manually or loaded via FDM to the interco scenario, split by ICP. The trial balance column contains a number loaded via FDM into the actual scenario that wasn't split by ICP. What the calculate does is it compares the number here to the number here and places a discrepancy in this column. When you validate your entity, you want this discrepancy column to be 0. If we look at this example, we did not load any balance here in the sales of goods intercompany, but we loaded it via FDM into our actual scenario. If we encounter something like this, we need to go back into our interco scenario and load this amount into the form and split it by ICP. Once we've corrected this, we want to go back and do all the steps over. We need to calculate, we need to check our balance sheet and income statement, and again, we need to check our intercompany report. For your final validation and data submission, we need to do a couple things before doing this. First would be entering any manual journals, and you also need to enter data in your CapEx form. If we go back to our task list, you can see that we've got a CapEx form on the left. If we click it, you can see that you just need to enter your CapEx number in the appropriate month for the entity that is shown in the POV. This is like any other form. You type in a number, it turns a darker shade of yellow, and you click the submit button. Once you've done that, you can go back through the steps of validating your data, going into process control, calculating, opening up your Explorer, running the balance sheet and P&L, running the intercompany report, going back to process control, and submitting your data. We'll be covering submitting data in Chapter 8.